My boyfriend dropped my private photos right into his friend's group chat. A little bonus for the boys. When I found out my clothes just got skimpier, my camera angles got a hell of a lot more creative. Eden stared at me like I'd grown a second head. He's openly humiliating you. How are you not pissed? I pictured that ruin your life, drop-dead gorgeous face of his. Honestly, I couldn't even bring myself to care. I unlocked my phone, pulled up my pending friend requests, and shoved the screen under her nose. A never-ending scroll of guys. Every single one of them was from his inner circle. Don't you get it? I tapped the glass. Birds of a feather collecting the ice-cold, untouchable. The obsessed psycho and the filthy rich playboy all at once. This is way more thrilling than some dark reality dating show. I slipped the phone back into my pocket with a smirk. We shouldn't give up the game too early, Ren. You are completely hopeless. Eden's voice blasted through the phone's speaker so loud. I had to pull the screen away from my ear. I thumbed the screen dark. Soft, dry laugh slipped past my lips. I fell for absolute trash. Hopeless didn't even begin to cover it. The second my eyes locked onto Declan's frat group chat, my life derailed. The photo was from his birthday night. He begged me for it, he wore me down, swearing up and down that it was just for his eyes, that it would never leave. His camera roll caved, but I never imagined the bastard would immediately drop the photo into his group chat, treating my body like some twisted bonus for his boys. The messages trailing underneath it made bile rise in my throat. Kyler, holy shit. This is your precious little full-ride scholar Declan. I thought she was just some nerd, but goddamn, she's fire under that skirt. Bennett definitely packed. She looks pretty loose in the picture. But Declan, didn't you always complain that these broke scholars were prudish and boring? Like she'd bite your head off if you even brushed against her, Declan. I really thought this kind of full ride beggar was an untouchable iceberg. Thought I'd have to burn serious cash on her. Turns out it just took a couple of cheap gifts to get her into bed. She's way cheaper and easier to manipulate than I expected. Declan, as for how loose she is. Declan, huh? It's whatever, Declan. She's like a lifeless log in bed. I have to initiate everything. If it wasn't for the fact that she was a clean virgin, I would have dumped her ages ago, Declan. Her face and body are the only things worth looking at. Snapping some pics to let the boys have a laugh is just putting her to good use. My lungs seized, air rushed out of the room. My fingertips turned white against the metallic edge of his phone. Eden was right. Any sane person would have packed their bags immediately and ran as far away from this pack of scum as possible. But why the hell should I? I handed him my heart, and he used it as a bargaining chip to trade nudes with his frat brothers. I thought about calling the cops, but what could a penniless nobody student do against the untouchable elite of the city? They wouldn't even have to lift a finger. Their family legal teams would crush me into dust and teach me exactly what absolute humiliation felt like. Just walking away, letting them off the hook. That was too damn easy. I didn't make a sound. I placed Declan's phone exactly where I found it, back under the covers next to him, and closed my eyes as if the world hadn't just shattered. I stopped rejecting his invitations into his exclusive world. I started demanding them at the frat's VIP booth party that weekend. Declan gripped my waist tight, parading me like a prize trophy in front of his trust fund circle. My girlfriend, Ran, I wore a pure white dress tonight. The neckline dipped just enough, exposing a deliberate sliver of soft skin and my collarbones. My makeup was a carefully constructed no-makeup look, pure and innocent at first glance, but entirely calculated to hook the eye. Whoa, Declan. Is this the legendary little scholar? A guy with ash blonde hair let out a low whistle. That was Kyler. I shrank perfectly into Declan's chest, my fingertips nervously twisting the fabric of my dress, gazing up with the wide, startled eyes of a cornered deer. Hi, my voice was a breathy, soft whispered. Declan ate it right up. His arm tightened around me, his jaw resting heavily on the top of my head, dripping with pure male vanity and possession. You're scaring her, reel it in, boys. I lowered my lashes, bearing the flash of ice in my eyes. The VIP booth was bathed in dim lighting, the bass from the club speakers vibrating straight through the floorboards. Declan got dragged away by a few guys to play dice, leaving me abandoned in the corner of the leather sofa. It barely took 5 minutes before Kyler slid onto the cushion next to me, 2 glasses of liquor in his hands. Little scholar looking awfully bored. All by yourself, drink. I instinctively shifted an inch away, my fingers tightly gripping the hem of my dress. I don't really drink, you can always learn. Kyler flashed a frivolous smirk, pushing the rim of the glass right up against my lips. It's not strong, it's sweet. Girls love it. His fingertips brushed against my lower lip, too lingering to be an accident. I jerked back like I'd been burned. The juice glass in my hand tilted, spilling the dark liquid all over his chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I scrambled to my feet in a panic, frantically grabbing a fistful of napkins to wipe down his expensive shirt. I didn't mean to. Kyler grabbed my wrist, stopping my frantic wiping. His thumb stroked suggestively over my pulse point. It's fine, just a limited edition shirt. How are you going to make it up to me? I tilted my head up, letting tears well in my eyes until my vision blurred. I bit my lower lip, trembling just enough to trigger a man's protective instincts. And out of the corner of my eye, I perfectly locked onto Declan standing across the room. His stare was heavy, piercing straight through the crowd. Dark with displeasure, he saw me getting bullied. Declan strode over. He grabbed my arm and yanked me firmly behind his back. There was nothing gentle about his grip. What the hell are you doing, Kyler? His voice was deadpan, giving away absolutely nothing. Kyler threw both hands up in surrender, feigning complete innocence. What could I possibly be doing? Your little scholar accidentally spilled her drink on me. Just giving her some comfort, man. He glanced down at the massive wet patch on his shirt, then looked back at my red, teary eyes. Knowing smirk curled his lips. Declan, your girl is way too pure. Blushes if you even look at her. Drops tears if you speak. She's like a porcelain doll. Better keep her locked up safe. It sounded like a compliment, but the undertone was sharp, mocking Declan for overreacting and calling me a total lightweight who couldn't take a joke. Hidden behind Declan's broad back, I quietly tugged at the hem of his jacket. I dropped my voice to a whisper, meant only for him. Declan, it's not his fault. I was just clumsy. Don't ruin the night over this. After months of dealing with Declan, I had him completely figured out. He was arrogant and hypocritical straight down to his bone marrow. He could treat me like a cheap toy for his frat brothers to laugh at. But the second another guy looked at me too long, he'd burn with territorial rage. A man's ego and his possessiveness, the easiest fuses in the world to light. He stared Kyler down, his eyes turning to ice. She's my girlfriend. Do I need you to teach me how to protect what's mine? All right, yours. She's all yours. Kyler shrugged, dropping the argument. His lazy, nonchalant posture made it obvious. He didn't give a damn about Declan's warning. The tension in the booth instantly plummeted to zero. Bennett, the guy sitting on the other side, immediately stood up to defuse the bomb. All right, break it up. It's not a big deal. Let's just drink, Declan. You better not lose this next round, man. Declan didn't say another word. He hauled me back to our seats by my wrist. His jaw clenched tight, threw back a massive gulp of liquor, his fingers gripping the glass so hard the crystal threatened to shatter. For the rest of the night, Declan stuck to me like a second skin. He kept me caged against his chest, his posture aggressive, staking his absolute claim. Kyler didn't approach again. He just threw mocking glances our way, his eyes practically laughing at Declan's pathetic territorial display. I played the perfect role, a startled, helpless little thing clinging to her boyfriend. They downed liquor, I sipped my juice. They talked luxury, cars, watches, and women. I kept my eyes glued to my phone, perfectly silent near the end of the party. I slipped away to the restroom. I stepped out of the stall and leaned over the sink to touch up my lipstick. Tyler's reflection materialized in the mirror behind me. He leaned casually against the door frame, both hands shoved in his pockets, watching me with infuriating amusement. Little scholar, doesn't keeping up that act exhaust you? My hand froze mid-swipe. I met his eyes in the mirror, letting just the right amount of panic bleed onto my face. What are you talking about? I don't understand. You don't understand. Tyler scoffed. He pushed off the door frame, closing the distance between us, slow and deliberate. You purposely spilled that drink on me. You played the pathetic victim right in front of Declan, aren't you? Just manipulating his possessiveness, so he'll follow you around. Like a loyal dog, he boxed me in, trapping me between the cold marble sink and his hard chest. He dipped his head, his lips hovering right next to my ear. Nice trick. His hot breath fanned over the shell of my ear, heavy with dangerous predatory intent. But your little games, they only work on a moron like Declan. Drop the innocent act when you're with me. My spine went rigid, my pulse slammed against my throat. But I didn't push him away. Instead, I tilted my chin up, locking eyes with him dead on. We were inches apart. Those playboy eyes of his, always so full of careless amusement, were focused, now sharp, calculating and certain. Let the terrified doe-eyed mask shatter the softness. Blood out of my face, leaving behind nothing but cold, hard ice. And what if I am? Kyler's pupils blew wide. I watched the micro-expression hit him. He clearly didn't expect me to admit it without a fight. Aren't you terrified? I'll tell Declan. He raised an eyebrow, his gaze dropping slowly to my lips. You won't. A razor-sharp smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. My voice was low, but ringing with absolute certainty. Telling him means admitting you're trying to steal his girl. Knowing Declan's ego, do you really think he'd believe you? Or would he just destroy you first? Kyler let out a dark chuckle. He raised his brows, shifting his weight as he stared me down, his tone sliding back into lazy arrogance. Little scholar, where is all this confidence coming from? What makes you think I'd risk stealing Declan's girl? Just for you, he closed in on me. The scent of his expensive cologne invaded my lungs. I didn't back down a single inch. I tilted my head back, my gaze raking brazenly over his half-unbuttoned collar. My fingertip traced a slow, deliberate line down the sticky stain on his dress shirt. My voice dripped with lazy confidence. Because I just saw your lock screen. It's a picture of me, and I lean my body flush against his, dropping my voice to a husky whisper. Instead of playing the clueless idiot, don't you think being an accomplice is so much more fun? Kyler froze completely, his eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. I watched the shock rip through him, followed by intense calculation, and finally the exact emotion I was hunting for. Absolute thrill. Declan's irritated voice echoed from the end of the hallway. Run? Are you in there? Declan's voice was closer now, sharp with irritation and heavy with alcohol. The heavy thud of his footsteps vibrated against the hallway floorboards. I didn't blink. I kept my eyes locked on Kyler. The thrill in his gaze was intoxicating, a dangerous, jagged high, but I couldn't let him have the upper hand. I stepped back, the warmth of his chest leaving my skin, and instantly let my shoulders slump. The cold, calculating ice queen vanished in a fraction of a second. The terrified, fragile little scholar returned. I reached up, deliberately smudging the corner of my lip gloss with my thumb, making it look like I'd just frantically wiped my mouth. I'm coming, Declan, I called out, my voice trembling perfectly, pitching up just enough to sound panicked. Kyler watched the transformation with sick fascination. A dark, appreciative smirk spread across his face. He leaned back against the sink, crossing his arms, completely unfazed by the imminent threat of his frat brother. You are out of your damn mind, he whispered, shaking his head. Absolute psycho. Keep your phone on you, Kyler, I whispered back, my voice barely a breath. I'll be in touch. I yanked the bathroom door open just as Declan reached for the handle. I practically collided with his chest, letting out a soft, startled gasp. My hands immediately curled into the fabric of his jacket, my fingers gripping him like he was my only lifeline. What took so long? Declan snapped, his eyes darting over my head and peering into the bathroom. His jaw locked instantly when he saw Kyler casually washing his hands at the sink. Declan's arm wrapped around my waist, his grip bruisingly tight. What the fuck are you doing in here with her? Kyler didn't even look up. He dried his hands slowly on a paper towel, his posture radiating lazy indifference. Relax, man. Just washing the sticky-ass drink your girl spilled on me. Didn't even realize she was in the stall. He tossed the paper towel into the trash and walked past us, clapping Declan hard on the shoulder. Keep a leash on your paranoia, December. It's a bad look. Declan bristled, his body going rigid against mine. I pressed my face into his chest, hiding my face. Declan, let's just go back, I murmured, my voice shaking. He scares me. He looks at me weird. It was the perfect trigger. Declan sneered at Kyler's retreating back, his chest puffing out with primal, toxic superiority. He kissed the top of my head, rough and possessive. He won't look at you again. Let's go. The game truly began the next day. Eden sat cross-legged on my dorm bed, watching me carefully slice the seal off a brand new burner phone. You're playing with fire, Ren, she said, tossing a handful of popcorn into her mouth. Declan is an arrogant prick, but Kyler? Kyler is a sociopath. If they find out you're playing them against each other, they will destroy you. They're already trying to destroy me, Eden, I said, not looking up. I popped the SIM card in and powered up the screen. They just think they're doing it slowly. I'm just accelerating the timeline. I found Kyler's number from Declan's phone the night before. I typed out a single message. To Kyler, the lock screen is cute, but the lighting in that photo is terrible. It took exactly 3 seconds for the typing bubble to appear. Kyler, you're bold for a girl sleeping next to the guy she's plotting against. What do you want, little scholar? Me. I want to know exactly how much they laugh behind his back. And I want the password to Bennett's laptop. Bennett was the quiet one, the peacekeeper. But I had spent enough time sitting silently in the corner of their VIP booths to notice things. I noticed that Bennett always handled the frat's finances. I noticed the panicked look in his eyes whenever the frat president asked for the ledger. And most importantly, I noticed that Bennett was the one who managed the cloud, the shared drive where they uploaded their twisted little trophies. Kyler, Bennett's laptop? You don't ask for much, do you? Why the hell would I help you burn my own brothers? I smiled, typing back effortlessly. Me, because you're bored. Because Declan acts like he owns the world when you know his father is about to cut him off. And because if you give me Bennett's password, I'll let you take the photo for your next lock screen yourself. The silence stretched for 2 minutes. Then, a 10-digit alphanumeric code appeared on my screen. Kyler, don't miss. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a ghost in my own life, pulling invisible strings while wearing the mask of the perfect, obedient girlfriend. With Declan, I became clingy, needy. I made sure to leave my phone unlocked on the bedside table when I showered, knowing his paranoid mind wouldn't be able to resist checking it. He found nothing, of course, just messages from my mom and study groups. But the lack of evidence didn't soothe him, it only made him crazier. I started dropping subtle, calculated poisons into his ear. Declan, I murmured one night, tracing patterns on his chest as we lay in his absurdly expensive off-campus apartment. Does Kyler hate me? He always smirks when I talk. It makes me feel dirty. Declan's muscles tensed. Kyler's just an asshole. Don't look at him. I try not to, I whispered, burying my face in his neck. But yesterday, when you went to get the car, he told me I was wasting my time with you. He said you were just a trust fund kid playing pretend. Declan sat up so fast I almost fell off the bed. He said what? Nothing, I gasped, pulling the sheet up to my chin, looking absolutely terrified of his anger. Forget I said anything, please. He was probably just drunk. That motherfucker, Declan hissed, pacing the room. The seed was planted. The roots of their brotherhood were beginning to rot. Meanwhile, my alliance with Kyler was entirely digital, purely psychological, and incredibly toxic. We never met alone. We only existed in stolen glances across crowded rooms and late-night messages on my burner phone. He fed me little pieces of the frat's secrets. I learned about the hazing incidents they covered up. I learned about the cheating rings. But I needed the cloud. The opportunity presented itself during the annual Alpha Sig Fall Formal. It was a massive, disgustingly opulent event held at a private estate an hour outside the city. Girls in silk gowns, guys in tailored tuxes, flowing champagne, and a heavy, suffocating air of elitism. I wore a dress Declan picked out. Emerald green silk, cut low in the back. You look expensive, he said, kissing my neck as we walked into the ballroom. I'm yours, I recited, the lie tasting like ash on my tongue. The night devolved quickly. Declan was drinking heavily, his eyes darting around the room, constantly checking who was looking at me. I excused myself to the bathroom, but instead, I slipped up the grand staircase toward the bedrooms where the boys had stashed their coats and bags. I found Bennett's duffel bag in the third room down the hall. My heart slammed against my ribs as I pulled out his sleek silver MacBook. I flipped it open. The password prompt appeared. My fingers flew across the keys, entering the code Kyler had given me weeks ago. Enter. The screen unlocked. I didn't waste a second. I bypassed the main folders and went straight for the hidden directories Kyler had hinted at. It didn't take long to find it. A folder simply titled Archive. I clicked it, and my stomach plummeted into a bottomless pit of ice. It wasn't just me. There were hundreds of photos, videos, spreadsheets. It was a systematic, deeply disturbing catalog of every girl who had ever crossed paths with their inner circle. They had them rated. They had bets placed. There were videos that were clearly taken without consent, hidden cameras in dorm rooms, intoxicated girls at parties. And then, I found Bennett's personal subfolder, Accounts. I opened the spreadsheets and almost laughed out loud at the sheer stupidity of it. Bennett wasn't just skimming from the frat's budget. He was embezzling thousands of dollars from the alumni donation fund to pay off his own gambling debts. I plugged in a tiny USB drive I'd hidden in my clutch and began transferring everything. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I wasn't just going to break Declan's heart. I was going to burn their entire lives to the fucking ground. You're not going to find any decent makeup in there, little scholar. I froze. Kyler stepped out from the shadows of the ensuite bathroom, holding a glass of amber liquid. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, his tie loosened around his neck. He walked slowly toward the bed, his eyes dropping to the glowing screen of Bennett's laptop. You didn't think I'd let you raid the vault without supervision, did you? He asked, taking a sip of his drink. I didn't close the laptop. I let the transfer bar continue to creep toward 100%. I stood up, smoothing down the front of my silk dress, meeting his gaze with dead, calm eyes. You gave me the password. You knew what I was coming for. Kyler stepped closer, stopping mere inches from me. The air between us crackled with a sick, twisted tension. I knew you were looking for leverage on Declan. I didn't know you were going to download a federal crime. He glanced at the screen, seeing Bennett's financial spreadsheets. You're taking all of it. I am. If I yell for Declan right now, what happens? Kyler mused, reaching out. His knuckles brushed against my bare shoulder. I didn't flinch. If you yell for Declan, I tell him you brought me up here. I tell him you gave me the password to frame Bennett. I tell him you've been obsessing over me for months. I leaned in, my voice a venomous whisper. Who do you think will swing at first, Kyler? Kyler let out a low, breathy laugh. The transfer pinged. 100%. I pulled the USB out, dropping it into my clutch, and snapped the laptop shut. You really are a psycho, Kyler murmured, his eyes dark, dropping to my lips. I thought you were just playing a game, but you want blood. They treated my body like a joke, I said coldly. I'm going to treat their futures like one. I moved a step past him, but Kyler's hand shot out, grabbing my waist, pinning me against the edge of the desk. The glass in his hand tilted. I helped you, he whispered, his face inches from mine. I want my payment. The lock screen. Let go of me, I said, my voice steady. Just a taste, he murmured, his eyes dropping. Get your fucking hands off her. The roar echoed from the doorway, like a gunshot. Declan stood there, his face twisted in a mask of absolute, murderous rage. His hands were balled into fists, his chest heaving. He had followed me. Everything happened in a blur of violence. Declan lunged across the room, tackling Kyler to the floor. The glass shattered against the hardwood. Kyler fought back, landing a vicious punch to Declan's jaw, but Declan was fueled by pure, unhinged jealousy. He pinned Kyler down, raining punches onto his face. You piece of shit. I knew it. I fucking knew you were trying to touch her. Declan screamed, blood flying from Kyler's split lip. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Bennett and 3 other guys burst into the room, physically dragging Declan off a laughing, bloody Kyler. Are you insane, Deck? Bennett yelled, struggling to hold him back. I stood by the desk, clutching my purse to my chest, letting the tears fall freely now. I sobbed, shrinking back against the wall. Declan. I cried out. He grabbed me. I just came up to get my lip gloss and he cornered me. Kyler spat blood onto the floor, looking up at me with a mixture of disbelief and sheer, twisted respect. He realized it then. He realized he had never been the mastermind. He was just the match I used to light the dynamite. She's lying, Kyler laughed, wiping his mouth. Your pure little scholar is a snake, December. Check her purse. Declan froze, panting heavily. He looked at Kyler, then looked at me. My lip was quivering. I looked like a broken porcelain doll. You're a dead man, Declan whispered to Kyler. He yanked himself free from Bennett's grip and rushed over to me, wrapping his arms around my shaking shoulders. I've got you.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I want to go home. I sobbed into his chest. Over his shoulder, I looked at Kyler. And I smiled, just a tiny, barely there curling of my lips. Kyler's eyes widened in realization as the final piece of the trap snapped shut. The drive back to the city was silent. Declan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He was vibrating with rage, entirely directed at Kyler. When we got back to his apartment, he poured himself a massive glass of scotch. I'm going to ruin him, Declan muttered, pacing the floor. I'm going to get him kicked out of the frat. I'm going to make sure his father cuts his trust. I sat on the edge of the leather sofa, perfectly calm. The tears were gone. The trembling had stopped. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the small silver USB drive, rolling it between my fingers. You don't have to ruin him, Declan, I said. My voice was no longer soft. It was flat, carrying a chilling resonance that made Declan stop pacing. He turned to look at me, a frown creasing his forehead. What are you talking about? I tossed the USB drive onto the glass coffee table. It landed with a sharp clack. It's already done. Declan stared at the drive. What is that? That, I said, leaning back into the sofa, crossing my legs, is the Alpha Sig cloud. Every photo, every video, every non-consensual recording your little brotherhood ever took, including the one of me. Declan's face drained of color. He took a step back, as if the tiny piece of metal on the table was a live grenade. How? How did you? I also took the liberty of downloading Bennett's financial ledgers. I continued, my voice conversational, as if I were discussing the weather. Did you know he's been embezzling alumni money for 2 years? Over $200,000. I imagine your father, being the primary donor, is going to be incredibly interested in that. Run, Declan breathed, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. The alcohol in his system seemed to evaporate, replaced by sheer panic. What did you do? Me? I tilted my head. I didn't do anything yet, but an anonymous email account just scheduled a mass send. In exactly 12 hours, the entire contents of that drive will be sent to the university dean, the local police department, and every major news outlet in the city. Declan dropped to his knees in front of the coffee table. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading, desperate. The untouchable elite, reduced to a trembling boy on my floor. Why? He choked out. Run, I love you. I protected you tonight. Why are you doing this? I stood up, looking down at him. The disgust I had harbored for months finally clawed its way out of my throat. You didn't protect me, Declan. You protected your property, I said, my voice dripping with venom. You loved owning me. You loved parading the broke scholar around so you could feel generous, and then you passed around my body to your friends like a party favor. I was drunk. It was a mistake. I swear to God, it was just one picture, he begged, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, out of his reach. It was my life, Declan. And now, I'm taking yours. I walked toward the door, my heels clicking loudly against the hardwood floor. Run, please. They'll expel us. My dad will kill me. You can't do this. His voice cracked, tears finally spilling down his arrogant, drop-dead gorgeous face. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at him one last time. I told you, I said softly, a genuine smile finally touching my lips. I'm just a cheap, easily manipulated iceberg. Turns out, icebergs sink ships. I opened the door and walked out into the cool night air. The fallout was biblical. Eden and I sat in a local diner 2 days later, watching the flat-screen TV mounted above the counter. The local news anchor looked grim. Massive scandal at the prestigious Alpha Sig fraternity. Following an anonymous leak of thousands of illicit files and financial documents, the university has officially suspended the chapter. Several students, including prominent legacy student Declan Vance, have been taken into police custody regarding allegations of non-consensual recordings and severe financial embezzlement. Eden took a slow sip of her milkshake, her eyes glued to the screen as footage of police carrying boxes out of the frat house played. Holy shit, she whispered. Yeah, I said, picking up a French fry. My burner phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a message from an unknown number. Unknown, you won. They're eating each other alive in here. Bennett took a plea deal and threw Declan under the bus. Declan is crying in a holding cell. I tip my hat to you, little scholar. It was Kyler. Even as his world burned, the playboy couldn't help but appreciate the fire. I didn't reply. I popped the back off the burner phone, pulled out the SIM card, and dropped it into my half-empty glass of water. I watched the little chip sink to the bottom, resting among the ice cubes. What was that? Eden asked, tearing her eyes away from the TV. Nothing, I said, offering her a bright, completely innocent smile. Just clearing out some trash.